good evening everybody and welcome to another couch conversation. So tonight we have Geoff visiting us. Now Geoff, could you tell us a little bit about yourself please?
I'm a doctor. I do a lot of general practice, but I actually have a special interest and I work for the public hospital system here in New Zealand, working with addiction, particularly opiates.
Oh wow.
In Australia, I had 300 heroin-using patients under my care over a period of about 20 years. So I certainly know opiates.
Yeah.
Marijuana, it comes involved with everyone who uses any drugs, of course, to some degree. So,
Right. Okay, so tonight we're going to focus in on marijuana. Thanks for bringing it up, Geoff. Over here we have Naomi. Could you please introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm a stay-at-home, home-educating mother, and yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm Zac, and I am a mathematics teacher up here in Auckland. That's where we're based right now. So, let's, first of all, marijuana, what springs to mind? Can you give me one word?
Stoner.
Stoner. Could you give me a word, Naomi?
Herb.
Herb. Oh, interesting that you would choose the word herb. Why?
You grow it. You take it.
Oh, okay. How do you take it?
Funny you should say that, you take it and it's a herb, because of course my disclaimer is that I am looking at anything in this discussion from the perspective of health. I'm not a policy maker, I'm not interested particularly in a referendum. My thing is health because that's my industry. But when you say herb, let's just all remember that marijuana, cannabis, was used by the Chinese 5,000 years ago as a very good treatment for labour pain in pregnancy. And it's been used pretty solidly from 5,000 years ago through India, certainly reached Europe and the US in the 1800s. And so when you say herb and people grow it and people use it, it's got plenty of millennia of experience, yeah. Absolutely.
Cancer patients.
Oh, and beyond, absolutely.
Yeah. Managing pain.
Yep, certainly.
So marijuana's become like a massive discussion. I think all over the internet I seem to be seeing marijuana stuff pop up. There's all sorts of studies that are coming through. And in New Zealand, we have a referendum coming up in about a year. So that referendum, what's going to happen is they're going to draw up some legislation and they're going to have a binding vote, that a yes-no. Do you accept this referendum about marijuana, like legalization for recreational use, for, I think we've already got medicinal use, I'm not certain about that. But anyway, it's coming up, so I guess it's kind of important that we talk about it now, right?
And the other thing is, it is really confusing. In fact, the more I talk about it, the more confused I get.
Right.
It really is confusing. Just a small clarification, you said the referendums are binding. It's actually a non-binding referendum, which means it's indicative, which means, without putting too fine a point on it, it's just to get an idea of the nation without necessarily anything coming of it.
Oh, right.
Necessarily, as I understand it.
And then the government changes straight afterward. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Cool.
Yeah, but it is confusing, as you say. Mm.
Right, interesting. So, yeah. Any thoughts on that?
What are you wanting to achieve with our conversation?
I think, as you say, people are getting a little bit confused. It's probably good to just get it out there and just have a chat, right?
Yeah.
And see what we think. Sorry.
So the referendum, to my understanding, will end up being a yes-no answer. And the referendum is a series of principles in a bill, but what the public will be asked to do is say yes or no.
Right.
And I think you had documented some of the features of that bill.
Yeah, get out the old bit of paper.
Not that the politics of it is the most important thing, but I think since it's coming up, I think people are going to be asking us and talking about it.
So from what I could glean, this article was from like 2 days ago on News Hub. They said a minimum age of 20 to use and purchase recreational cannabis, regulations and commercial supply controls, limited home growing options, a public education program, stakeholder engagement. What does that mean? Anyway, and there was another fact, but I'll leave that to later.
Right, okay, so I guess the crunch is it means you can grow some dope. You can grow your own weed.
Now, interestingly, 10 to 12% of New Zealand use marijuana. Guess.
What, medicinally or recreationally?
Yeah. How often do you think?
10 to 12% use marijuana at least twice a week. Would be a guess, totally.
What's your guess?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, similar.
In New Zealand, it's daily. 10 to 12% of New Zealand are using marijuana daily.
For a range of purposes.
No, this is the THC one. Sorry.
Recreational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so we'll talk about this, wait, one more cool stat. 2012, New Zealand worked out to be the most, United Nations did a survey 2012, and we were top marijuana users in the world per capita.
Right. Oh, well, it's a relevant discussion. Now,
Yeah.
can I just come in there?
That's scary.
You used a little bit of jargon there, and I think for this audience and everyone, your little bit of jargon needs some clarification. You said THC.
Oh, yes,
so
sorry.
let's just break it down.
Please.
You said what do we hope to achieve? I think if nothing comes out of tonight, if we can just provide some, break it down, a little bit of clarification,
Please.
because we start throwing things down. So,
what one do you want? What 3 letters are you after?
yeah, okay. Well, what's this THC you refer to?
THC I refer to. Now, what's it stand for? You're the doctor.
Yeah, so delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, something like that.
Write that down, everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Delta 9 THC, that's what we say. In contrast to cannabidiol, which is CBD. So from now on, we'll stick to THC or CBD.
Okay.
I can't say either of them.
So marijuana has 2 components, THC and cannabinoids, or what are they? CBD.
Yeah.
THC, CBD. Okay, so let's talk about what one first.
So it's very interesting. As I say, it's confusing, but it's very interesting. If you smoke a joint, you're breathing in literally thousands of different psychoactive and thousands of different chemicals. Same as when you smoke a cigarette, you're breathing in a lot of stuff. But when we're breaking it down into the two, the simplest way of thinking of it is THC is the psychoactive substance that gets you high. Okay? That's THC.
Yeah.
CBD has no psychoactive quality, right? And if we want to keep it simple, that gets you better because that's got more of a medical perspective. So gets you high or gets you better. Okay?
So things like cannabis oil are focusing on that.
CBD. Absolutely, that's a good description. So people will have cannabis oil or cannabis drops, and I think you're aware that already legislation, as we stand in New Zealand, any GP can write a prescription for CBD.
Right.
Okay, there's no magic about that. You can go.
I can talk to you afterward if you...
Yes, right. Would you like some CBD? But remember, you're not going to get high from the CBD.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So when we're talking about getting high, we're talking about that euphoric, giggly, relaxed, pleasant, existential sort of situation that people wants to achieve with a drug, and obviously then comes all of the range of dependence, tolerance, intoxication, and sometimes that can have a big negative role as well as a pleasant role. And of course, in New Zealand, as we currently stand, people are going to jail for possession, cultivation, dealing with drugs. So I've just cut in there, but that's basically the referendum question: should people be allowed to have a small amount? So we've got CBD, which is more the medical and doctor, and certainly an area we're interested in. And then there's the every member of the 10% or 12% of our community who see fit to have some marijuana in their possession. Yeah.
So you're saying CBD is already legal and being used in New Zealand?
It's not being used much, but it's certainly legal. Yeah.
Right.
It costs $1,000 a month. Okay, $1,000 a month at least. And that's a problem because we're talking about opening it up and increasing awareness and talking about, you already said, cancer, pain, and there's a list of things that it does excel in. There's a list of things where it might help, okay? But of course, if something excels in it, you know what's going to happen, and this is getting very political now, but if some drug excels and it's legal, well then why doesn't Pharmac fund it so we can get it for $5? So they don't necessarily follow, but it does open up that can of worms, that's for sure.
And are people starting to grow in New Zealand for the CBD component? Was I reading that somewhere, or was that?
Yes, and given that there's probably going to be more, I think there are some providers who are ramping it up big time. But I don't know much about that, frankly.
Because New Zealand's a pretty good climate for growing all sorts of things, right? So it may well be pretty good for our GDP or whatever. Just a side note. Anyway, so CBD, what sort of things can it help with? I had a list, but I can't. What are the things?
Yeah, so pain is on the list, but it's actually well down. Cannabis is very good for neurological spasticity. But it's just coming back to me, the number one above everything benefit from prescription cannabis is wasting diseases, so stimulating appetite. So your classic sort of condition would be if someone had HIV and they've got a wasting disease associated with their HIV. We've heard of the munchies, so it's actually basically putting the munchies to good use.
Right.
Okay, and it's above everything else. It reigns supreme from that point of view. Second, absolutely proven, double-blind studies, scientifically validated. The second greatest thing is in the situation where someone has got intractable vomiting, intractable nausea, like what happens with cancer or cancer chemotherapy.
Right,
okay, the very severe, I guess it's a similar gastrointestinal side effect of cannabis. It's very good from that point of view.
Right.
Thereafter, if you look at the list, everything from chronic pain to anxiety through to fibromyalgia through to the list goes on, and you can imagine a list of more than 20 or 30 things, and it just goes down the list there. And the level of proof that actually does something or does something very well in those conditions, it just gets shakier and shakier as we go down the list.
Right.
But that's why I emphasise those two things, gastrointestinal and wasting diseases, the munchies, absolutely, that's proven for sure.
So CBD is better than antioxidants?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, anyway, now, so CBD sounds pretty good, right? And I don't know if many people seem to have a problem with that one. Maybe if they're not informed about, they'll be like, marijuana, no. Right? So we've covered CBD. What about THC? So THC is that 10 to 12%, as you say, right?
So that's where it starts to get. We just got to be really clear. The 10 to 12%, they're smoking it. Okay, they're smoking marijuana, right? So when we talk about the medical uses, we're not talking about some old grandma with cancer getting down and on the bong or having a joint. Okay.
I'm sorry, the slang for that is a chuffing.
Yeah, so Zac found this very amusing, that I come from Australia where cannabis can be used as a noun, chuff. Get a bit of chuff, I'll buy some chuff. How much is your chuff? How much chuff have you got? And of course you can use it as a verb. We'll go chuffing. Zac found that very amusing.
It was quite.
Yes. So anyway, so just to clarify, you can get a bit of chuff and you can smoke it, but of course, almost across the board, doctors are not going to recommend smoking anything for medical reasons. Okay, and let's just be really clear. This is the health focus again. Sore throat. If mixed with tobacco, which is often the case, all the range of cancers that we are trying our bestest to eradicate in our society, all of those, the full gamut available, caused directly related, proven with cannabis as
Right.
well. Bronchitis, asthma, the whole works. If I have a joint, in the next hour after I have a joint, I'm 5 times more likely to have a heart attack.
But there are other means of consuming, right? So you've got edibles.
Yes.
You have vaporizing. What about vaporizing? Is that?
Yeah, it's not happening in New Zealand, but so I haven't seen it. But certainly anything avoiding the respiratory tree is a good way of. Well, sorry, let me say that again. Anything avoiding smoking is going to be safer. Right. So they also have spray mist inhalers, oils to rub on your skin, transdermal, edible, as you say. But certainly drops, cannabis oil in the form of drops.
Right.
There's something we should just clarify, if I may, and that is we talk about, and this is the confusion, we talk about CBD and THC, but then there is, within that discussion, there is an overlap between the two. Right. So I've made it very clear, euphoria, medical, it's not that simple. Now that we've made that distinction, if we buy a standard Tilray are the Western Canadian producers, and they've got a $30 million plant there, I think, on Vancouver Island, and they certainly supply to Australia and New Zealand. A standard Tilray product may actually have a little bit of THC and a little bit of CBD. Why is that? Because the two, they come from the same plant, but they actually work well together. So can you imagine, let's just take an example of cancer pain, to have a little bit of anti-anxiety, a little bit of, not the full word euphoria, but certainly something to make you feel good, stimulate the appetite, make you feel good. So bingo, it's a great thing to have a benefit in combination. So once again, it's starting to get a little bit more confusing there. So if New Zealand says, right now we can give CBD widely in this country at great expense, if New Zealand says that, then the people in the know would say, well, what about just opening it up to get the full benefit of cannabis?
Right.
In other words, a bit of THC.
Right.
So we're not necessarily talking about smoking it because of the harms associated with that. And we're certainly not talking about using it for euphoria when we're using it in medical treatments, because then you run into problems with addiction.
But as you say, there's a crossover, and then there's also some times that the THC is useful in a medical scenario, right?
Absolutely.
So what you're saying with cancer patients with their anti-anxiety, is nausea with CBD or THC?
Probably a combination.
Right. Okay. So let's think about it. Okay. So now, if I was to smoke some marijuana, right? If I did a little puff, or what am I going to do? Ate a little speck. Would I be gone?
Euphoric immediately.
Yeah. Would I be on another planet? Is there, so for example, like drinking, I could have a beer, or I can have a dozen beers, right? Now, a dozen beers, I would say, ooh, that's not great. Right, one beer, I would say, well, that's, after Friday afternoon. Fantastic. What if I was to be with, let's say, some of my teacher friends, finish work, and they're like, let's go to the, I don't know, behind the building and enjoy, a little bit of this together, like a beer. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that?
I would just avoid it, but then speaking from ignorance.
I think what you're saying is
in a year's time.
It is dose related. That's it's the same as beer. You have one, or you have 15, right? And there's an incremental effect, and it's the same with weed. It's dose related. But remember, if we're talking about if you're talking about a natural substance being inhaled through the lungs, your joint and your joint may actually have different effects because
of the body
they're natural. Because of the body, there's a few different factors. How it's rolled, which bit of marijuana it is. You can be. And furthermore, I'm jumping around here a bit, but this is very, very interesting. it also makes it nigh on impossible for studying medically how good or how bad it is if you're talking about the natural product. Even if because you're talking about a natural plant, so you get a bit of bud, you get a bit of leaf, you get various bits. You chop it up, you purify, but you still can't be quite sure at the molecular level whether you get the same thing. And then it's going through a different pair of lungs as well. So it's complicated.
Can they test the levels of THC and CBD within?
Yes.
Right. So, but then that's unlikely if it's illegal. There's no way that's being tested, is there?
Especially with your teacher friends behind the school.
Yeah. Who knows what they've brought to class with them? So there's all sorts of varieties out there as well, and so maybe my teacher friends and I would have this leafy, high CBD, low THC.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, yeah.
Yeah, true. It's been a tough week at school.
Yeah, that's right. And in the same way as plant technology has developed over the last 100 years, so has the ability to produce very high THC level, so that people who are smoking it to
Maximum
get effect, they want to get the maximum effect for their buck. Yeah.
What about, let's say, if marijuana did become legal, so say this referendum goes through, do you think that marijuana use would increase or decrease in New Zealand? What are thoughts on that?
I would have naturally assumed it would increase.
And would alcohol consumption decrease relatively if there's a replacement vice?
Yeah, I think there are very good data on this. It's just that I'm not aware of the very good data.
So for example, you could look at Canada and see how that's affected them.
Yeah, and it's of course that's the national issue, isn't it? Whether safety is going to improve on our roads.
If you increase the speed.
Alcohol, cannabis, that sort of thing.
But they have breathalyzers for cannabis, right?
Do they?
I'm pretty sure they do.
Buccal swabs, are they, or mouth swabs? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ignorant. Yeah.
No, well, we all
never been tested. But I just brought in the subject of road accidents because of the absolute. I listed some of the absolute benefits that cannabis can have. Once again, back in the health spectrum, absolute proven medical effects. We can't let this conversation go without saying schizophrenia.
Yes.
Okay.
As a side effect.
As a direct correlation with marijuana. And we're talking about, according to the research, somewhere between 4 times the risk of developing schizophrenia and 25 times the risk of developing schizophrenia.
Wow.
So schizophrenia is a very severe medical disorder. Even in 2019, it's a very severe medical disorder. It's not something to be meddled with. And when we're talking about somewhere between, according to the various studies, 5 times and 25 times, that's pretty serious.
Right.
So that's one absolute, it's not just maybe or could be, absolute proof correlation with marijuana.
Yeah.
Secondly, road traffic accidents. Absolute correlation with marijuana. And why does that come up there? Is that a health thing? Of course it's a health thing, because we've been working on bringing down our road toll due to alcohol consumption for the past 50 years. And bingo, we're talking about, hey, let's just open up the marijuana.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So road traffic accidents, underweight, low weight birth babies.
Right.
So there's certainly that's an absolute correlation. And the first one on the list is one I've already mentioned, which is respiratory tree disorders. Yeah.
No.
So that's the negatives.
Yep,
we haven't talked a lot about the positives, but
good. Well, what are the positives? Well, it's obvious that 10 to 12% of New Zealand are after legalisation. Does that decrease gang revenue in a big way? If you make it legal again, then the gangs sort of lose a big chunk of their... And we lost all the meth. Did something about a whole lot of meth busts. So maybe gangs have less revenue. What other...
Well, let me tell you a story about that. I promised you I wasn't going to talk about opiates, just because I like talking about opiates, but I have to tell you, so my patients back in Melbourne were very keen on marijuana. And then one day they went to their dope supplier and he said, supply and demand, hardly got any marijuana, the price is up, but I'll tell you what I can do. I've actually got some heroin. And my patients got 100% because they were teenagers and they voted with their wallets. If they could get something new or something different for the same price or a little bit cheaper even than the marijuana at that particular time, go for it. So that's just a small little a comment there when you say about gangs. You know, if you've got the same person illicitly selling you marijuana as they're selling you methamphetamine or synthetic cannabis, which is another story, or opiates, well, it's very easy to get the two a bit muddled and you find up yourself with a heroin habit or something else.
Right.
So in favour of legislation, of legalisation of marijuana, tick.
Yeah, there you go.
Bingo, there's a big tick.
I think also as a monetary benefit for the country, you'd probably find that it'd be a nice source of revenue or income for us. And instead of bringing it all in or whatever, we could, I don't know, start supplying other countries that are legalising it.
Well, as I say, it's a fertile country.
Yeah, we need to get rid of all these cows somehow, so maybe we could, swap them out.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you very much for joining us on the couch today.
Yep, thank you.
I have learnt a thing or two.
I have too, but then I
That's
started with nothing.
And I'm still learning. I guess I can't turn the camera off until I've just got to say something about a particular group, and that's the adolescent group. Okay, so don't let the audience jaw hit the floor when we say that we're not just talking about people. Oh well, I'll start experimenting cannabis when I'm 17 or 18. We're talking about 12-year-olds. We're talking about 13-year-olds here, and another definite thing which is still being unfolded in our research is the effect of cannabis on the developing brain. And unfortunately, the effect, the severe effect on cognition, short-term memory, long-term memory, and probably a whole lot of other things relating to the mental development, it's pretty deleterious until the age of 25.
Maybe we should get legislation changed there.
Yes.
Well, I actually teach high school as well, so I'll tell you there's a lot of 13 to 18-year-olds having a bit of chuff.
Yes.
Chuffing a bit of chuff.
Yes,
In
absolutely.
my classes, and I can tell, why am I so bad at maths? Well.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So we are sitting here in a church.
Yes.
We're going a little bit of a step further, but one of the major things that research once again has shown is that if you're worried about your children or you're worried about your family member who's getting into cannabis or any other drug for that matter, well, there's no tick-the-box answer. There's no pill to fix everything. But I'm just thinking of the church environment. One thing that has been shown can be summarised with a pretty good word, and it's connectedness. Mm-hmm. Connectedness. Now that could be at the marae, it could be at the mosque, it could be the car club, it could be the photo enthusiasts group, doesn't matter. But once again, I mention it here because what a wonderful thing it is to have a brotherhood or to have a fellowship where people, they can see, aunties and uncles or people, the role models.
Yeah.
Quite a big thing. That's a subject all on its own.
I look forward to it.
Within a fellowship, it's almost like an antidote to that adolescent getting into the chuff at age 13.
Right.
Role modelling.
Wow, fantastic.
Had to get my
you
word in there.
snuck it in there. Well done.
Yeah,
All right, thank you very much.